headed over to our Lewis Automotive Group hotline, and Brett Dolan is with us as usual on a Thursday, and we'll start with our usual question, which is, Brett Dolan, where in the world are you today?
Well, I'm here at Bud Walton today. I'm leaving for Buffalo tomorrow, and I hope to get back for what is some portion of a baseball series on Sunday, but I think we're both kind of wondering what that's going to look like between Friday and Saturday and Sunday. But Friday is supposed to be a linear telecast, so that takes us out of the equation, and Saturday, who knows? So it's going to be a fun few days of travel in Mother Nature.
What's going on in Buffalo, New York to take you away?
Well, I have the WNIT every year, and it's kind of our box of chocolates. We sit around late on a Wednesday night not having any clue where we're going, and then we wait for the semifinals and whatnot. So I thought I was going to Illinois State at about 9 o'clock, and about 9:15 I found out I was going to Buffalo. So away we go. Maybe I'll take in a little Niagara Falls tomorrow, some basketball on Saturday, and very little sleep on Sunday to get back for, I hope, a couple of baseball games, but we'll see.
Give me thoughts on the Final Four. 4 number 1 seeds that make it there. SEC on one side. Everybody's picking, for the most part, it seems like everybody's picking Duke versus Florida, and then take it from there. How do you see it?
I think that's a pretty good pick. I think, obviously, with the Broom injury, that changes things a little bit. I had Houston at the very beginning winning the national championship. I probably am not allowed to come off that. I think Duke has impressed me a lot more than I thought they would. I kind of had an anti-ACC bias, but the more I watch them, it's not just offensively, or it's not just a handful of players that'll play in the NBA at the next level. They play defense, too. And Houston really tries to get down in the mud with you and wrestle you around and win kind of an ugly game. Duke can play good defense and play a little prettier. So I don't know if I had another choice to pick it again, whether I might take Duke. I don't want to say that the winner of that game will have a great chance of winning the national championship, because obviously you got 2 number 1 seeds on the other end. The more I get into this Ken Pom efficiency thing, though, Phil, the more I'm intrigued, because they look at the efficiency rankings and whatnot, and a certain number like 35-ish is pretty rare territory. All 4 teams are kind of in that rare territory, which kind of speaks to 4 number 1 seeds, but Florida's not quite as efficient numbers-wise as the rest. So I don't know if that's where people get by thinking that the winner of this Duke-Houston game is going to have a pretty good chance of maybe winning the title.
Yeah, a few years back, that's because I'm with you. That Duke-Houston game, it's going to be the late game. It's going to be a heavyweight fight. I think Florida does have a puncher's chance in the national championship game, because you're preparing for it. You're not really preparing for that game yet. We'll see how it goes. I think if Auburn gets there, I would like either Houston or Duke. But that's going to be an absolute battle, and Florida can put up 100 on anybody. I wouldn't have Florida favored over them, but they might have an easier test with Auburn. They might be a little fresher going in there, and they could jump out on you.
I think you're right. I guess getting back to Florida, Matt, there's 2 things that jump out at me, and they run counter to each other, which runs into my confusion. They can score and they can win games in different ways, which is impressive. The flip side of that is they turn the ball over at times with stupidity. I mean, they went through a couple of stretches in their games. I'm like, if they play like this for a longer stretch than 7-8 minutes, I don't know if they can outscore their way out of their mistakes. Now, they can score, which would be a fun matchup, I think, with Florida and either of those 2 teams, whether it's Houston or whether it's Duke, because you kind of have defense on one side of the bracket and offense potentially there on the other.
What's your thoughts on a guy leaving Texas A&M, Buzz, going to Maryland? And a lot of talk on, is it a step down, SEC to, I guess, what are they in, the Big Ten now, or the ACC West?
Big Ten.
I forget what Maryland's in. I think of Maryland as a basketball school. I think Maryland even a better basketball school than A&M 100%. Now, yeah. I know it's a different landscape with the money or NIL, what you can use. How do you think it works out for Buzz?
No, I think it's a better job. I really do, and I know we kind of live in the SEC world, but exactly the way you phrased it, Matt, Maryland is a basketball school. They had a football game late in the year when my Hawkeyes rolled in there, and I'm watching it on TV, and I'm like, are there 10,000 people in the stands? I know it was a brutally cold day, but, in Michigan, if it's brutally cold, there's still going to be 100,000 there for a football game. It is a basketball school. It's a basketball school that I think can be at a a Sweet 16, Elite 8 type program, which is kind of where they were this year. I don't know if A&M has that capability. So even though it is the SEC and we know Texas A&M has a lot of money, I do think it's a little better job. And I guess maybe part of the reason why is we heard Nate Oates' name kind of floated for about a day on whether he might actually leave Alabama because of the same thing, kind of going from a football school to a basketball school. But we'll see how it plays out with Texas A&M. I think Arkansas hoping that they can continue to kind of move up the pecking order, so to speak, and kind of separate themselves and leave some of these non-traditional basketball schools in a different tier.
Well, so Maryland going over to the Big Ten, it's not the same basketball program they were in the ACC. Understand they still want to be a basketball school, but if you're in the Big Ten, you've got to pay attention to football in a way that Maryland probably didn't think about in the ACC. That being said, the whole thing of the lead up to Willard leaving Maryland was just wild. And some of the things that he said publicly, he basically announced to the athletic directors a departure for SMU in a press conference where he wasn't even there to talk about anything like that. But so so Buzz is leaving the SEC from a school that identifies obviously as a football school, but has tons of money. He's going to a school in Maryland where the coach left because he didn't want to have a football team that competes against them. And that's what that's about. You go to Villanova. Now we're talking about a whole different thing. And the Big East stands apart from every other league in college basketball and how they're going to fund their basketball teams. And they don't have to compete with football. Even UConn.
No, they don't. You're
UConn
right,
doesn't really have to compete with football.
No, you're right. They don't have to compete, but they don't have the football revenues either, which I think we still know football funds darn near everything. So you have the ability then, without paying football players, to pay your basketball players more, but you've still got to come up with this money. And Villanova is a national championship type program. They don't play in the biggest arena. You can't sell more tickets. So I'm still kind of a little curious on that. I wonder if part of the frustration, though, is being in a basketball league, you feel like decisions are made to benefit basketball. We know at that Big Ten, the decisions were benefiting football because how many coaches did we see complaining about the West Coast to East Coast road trips and bouncing back and forth? I think I read UCLA women's basketball traveled 35,000 miles this year, making maybe 3 trips to the East Coast. That seems absurd. Stanford softball just went on an 11-day road trip. Nebraska baseball went on an 11-day California road trip. The SEC can't freaking figure out how to play a game on Monday when it's going to be 65 degrees and sunny and teams are busing 4 hours back and forth because we have these rules in place that don't make any sense. But on the other extreme, we got teams traveling for darn near 2 weeks. So I think that's part of the frustration that maybe some of these Big Ten coaches have, whether they're East Coast or West Coast, because of all the demands it takes to try and be competitive, because we know you can't be at your best when you're going back and forth across the country on a regular basis.
So I brought up earlier, I don't know if you probably saw this, Carly Keats went into the transfer portal from women's basketball. Eugenia is in the portal. Carly Johnson is in the portal. I might be missing out on a couple of others that have gone in there too. And today, commitment coming from Wyvette Mayberry, point guard at Tulsa and then Kansas. And now I see that Talia Jones, who was Oral Roberts' leading scorer last year at 18 points a game and scored 23 against the Razorbacks at Bud Walton Arena, has also gone into the portal. So, I mean, it only makes sense for somebody that ran Coach Music's offense at ORU to maybe do the same thing at Arkansas, right?
Yes, and I think we can expect a little bit of that. The funny thing you mentioned about Mayberry, Phil, I walked into Bud Walton, and I was coming up to the front doors, and I could see through the glass where the fans walk in, and I'm like, that's Lee Mayberry. And, he's got that unmistakable look and that beard, and no, it was Lee, and there was a reason why he was there yesterday, because his daughter was doing the photo shoot, and I think I saw her play in Kansas for the WNIT, what would have been 2 years ago, and this crazy weekend that I'm bouncing around. And I'm not sure how many stops she's had, but I know she's probably happy to have a chance to finish here, and I think there will be more coming. The tough part is when you're having players go in the portal, sometimes it's the ones you don't want to leave that go in the portal, and it's the ones that stay who probably are those that are unsure if they can get other opportunities. So there's a lot of work ahead for Kelsey, and I know she's got a lot of visits and whatnot scheduled here over the next week.
Brett, I'm not going to ask you if we're going to play baseball this weekend because I know at some point we will. But you got to get the games in, and that's the thing that I guess I'm most worried about because I've done almost this 11 years calling Razorback games. I think I can only remember one series that they didn't get the full thing in. It might have been two. I think one at Tennessee, and I think I saw one at Kentucky where they got in the two games instead of three. Like mostly, even on weekends where it doesn't ever look like you have a window to play, they find windows to play games.
Right, and I hope they do. Now, Dave's press conference earlier this morning, he kind of says what he wants to say without exactly pinpointing it. But, if they can only get one game in on Friday or Saturday, it looks like maybe a doubleheader at, I don't know, he said noon on Sunday. Now, those are 2 7-inning games, so you have to kind of bend what you'd prefer to do. Again, Monday looks fine. These teams can bust back and forth. I don't know why we're stuck on this rule. Or Dave was asked that about from some of the media members. We have teams traveling in the middle of finals week for multiple days. We have teams not going to class for multiple weeks at a time. I don't know what a Monday game would have to do with it when it comes into getting this series in play. Neither team is flying or chartering. But I hope you're right. I hope there's an opportunity. I don't know if maybe that would be Saturday and then they can play two. Arkansas doesn't want to lose these games for any reason, not only because they're playing well, they're playing a team that they probably should be able to handle, but you look at the standings the other day, and Arkansas is 8-1. You're feeling pretty good about where they're at. You can't help but do it, and there's 3 other teams that are 8-1. So, you don't want to lose out on opportunities to play games at home against teams that you're ahead of in the standings. So I hope they can figure it out. I hope there's a break either Friday or Saturday, and I'm hoping that we can at least play 2 on Sunday, if not Friday or Saturday.
Brett, safe travels to Buffalo. Hope everything goes well there. I'll pick I'll pick Buffalo in the championship game just because they're playing at home, and I see they're 17-2 in their home arena. And then we'll see you at Baum sometime this weekend between raindrops, okay?
How about this one? Those 2 teams started the season facing each other in Buffalo. So when does the team start a season and finish the season with the same one? So that's a little bit unique. But hope to see you Sunday, no doubt.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on all the madness. Even if your bracket is busted, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with a free Sweet 16 bracket and live betting on every remaining tournament game. With the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to MLB, NHL, and MMA, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here.